We are going to go over an assortment of things today, and hopefully in a relatively short amount of time. First of all, let's talk about the powers of Congress. Congress has a number of powers that are specifically written into the Constitution, and those powers are known as enumerated powers. We've talked about this before in government class. So these are the ones that are specifically written into the Constitution. Everybody knows they're there. They also have what are known as implied powers, and those are powers that are hinted at. Remember, they originate from the necessary and proper clause, and they have to be linked back to one of their enumerated powers. So, an example is draft. Congress has the power to raise an army and a navy, but it doesn't give them the power to draft people into service. But it is implied that if you can raise an army and navy, that you can also force people to serve into that army and the navy. So to draft somebody is not an enumerated power, but it is an implied power of Congress. And again, I know that's a review. I know we talked about enumerated and implied powers earlier in the year. So what are the powers that Congress has? Well, they're found in Article 1, Section 8. And if you don't want to take my word for it, if you use my PowerPoint, you can go right to the Constitution and look at it. They have a number of money powers, and we've talked about some of these in class. One of them is the power to tax. Another one is the power to borrow money. Another one is to regulate commerce. Congress is sometimes given the power of, or we say that they have the power of the purse, which means they're the only ones that can spend money. They're the only ones that can borrow money. They're the only ones that can tax. They have a lot of control when it comes to money. Those are their biggest powers. They also can regulate commerce, and that's the one that gets linked to quite a bit as an implied power. And then some other things, coining money, set the rules for bankruptcy, set the punishment for counterfeiters. So they have a number of monetary powers. They also have a number of military powers. We were a little bit concerned about having a military. Remember, the Articles of Confederation didn't allow us to have really much of a military at all because we were afraid that, well, military is power, and power means maybe the abuse of people. So when we wrote the Constitution, we decided, well, we got to have a military, but how do we ensure that that military will not become too powerful? Well, one way that we tried to better ensure that is the military doesn't have a lot of power over itself, meaning that they don't get to declare war. Congress declares war. They don't get to decide how many or how large their army or navy or whatever branch is. Congress sets that. So Congress could reduce the military down to nothing if they wanted to. When it comes to funding, the military gets all their money from Congress. The best they can do is ask Congress to fund different weapons or whatever they want to do. Even the rules within the military. Should the military allow someone who is openly gay to serve in the military? Well, for much of our history, the answer is no. A few years ago, Congress changed the rule to yes, they can serve. Who made that rule? Congress did. So a lot of the power that over the military is Congress. Now, the president is commander-in-chief, and we'll talk about that at another time, but Congress has a number of military powers, and all of those were designed to ensure or better ensure that the military doesn't become an entity of itself and become too powerful and then, maybe overthrow the government. It puts a little bit of control over the military. There's some other miscellaneous powers that are written into the Constitution. Some of these we talked about, like establishing federal courts that are lesser than the Supreme Court. All copyright and patent laws deal with really inventions and creations are made by Washington, D.C. They're not made by the states. But these are some miscellaneous powers that Congress has. And then remember necessary and proper. The last clause in the section that gives Congress power says that Congress can make any laws that are necessary and proper in carrying out any others. Okay, and remember that's what gives them implied powers. Again, something we had talked about earlier. So power of the purse is kind of a slang term, but it really is often said that Congress controls the purse strings of America, meaning that all taxing and spending and borrowing is done by Congress, not the president. I know presidents sometimes say, hey, vote for me and I will lower your taxes, but they can't. Only Congress can. The president can try to convince Congress to lower taxes, but the president cannot. These are all powers of Congress. couple other powers that we've talked about before, but we're going to reiterate on them again. Confirmation power. That is a power of the Senate. And that is the president has the power to appoint federal judges, ambassadors, and so on. But all of those appointments have to be confirmed by a majority vote of the Senate. Same thing when it comes to treaties. The president can make treaties, but those treaties must be approved by a 2/3 vote of the Senate. We refer to that as ratification power. The Constitution also denies some power to Congress, some things that Congress cannot do. Article 1, Section 9 gets into things that are denied to Congress. And one line says that Congress shall not make any bill of attainder laws nor ex post facto laws. Okay, what a bill of attainder law would be is a law that would find somebody guilty without a trial. So if Congress would pass a law that convicts me of a crime, that would be a bill of attainder law. That is unconstitutional. Only our judicial system can convict somebody of a crime. An ex post facto law would punish somebody for something that wasn't a crime when they did it. Okay, so let's say that there's no law against, let's just use in my classroom. There's no law against chewing gum. So let's say that you were chewing gum yesterday. Today I change the rules and I say, okay, no more gum in class. Now I can do that because I can make rules on gum, but I can't punish you for chewing gum yesterday because it wasn't a crime yesterday. Okay, so we can't punish somebody for a crime if it wasn't a crime when they committed the act. Does that make sense? That is an ex post facto law, and Congress can't make those. The one that we see most often is this one. The writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended except in times of rebellion or invasion. Okay, the writ of habeas corpus means that you cannot be held without a trial. We see this in criminal law quite a bit, habeas corpus hearings. But holding somebody without a trial would be a violation of the habeas corpus provision. Now, the Constitution says that if we are under open rebellion, habeas corpus, can be suspended. And during the Civil War, President Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. Some people were held indefinitely without a trial. It has to be in time of rebellion or invasion. Now, we have violated this before. We may be violating this now as we're holding people in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. We certainly violated this during the Japanese internment during World War II. We were not under invasion. We were attacked, but not under invasion. And it was an open rebellion. And yet we held people indefinitely in those Japanese internment camps. Not supposed to be allowed. Congress cannot suspend habeas corpus except in these times. Other powers denied to Congress: we cannot tax exports. There's no titles of nobility, so we will never have a Duke of South Dakota or a knight or a queen. We can't have any of those in the United States. Let's also jump into impeachment, because we've talked about impeachment before, and impeachment is mentioned a few different times within the Constitution. We know that federal judges can be impeached. We know that the president can be impeached. But we haven't really talked about how impeachment works. So let me give you a brief explanation. First of all, the Constitution says that the president, the vice president, and civil officials, which are federal judges, can be impeached. And they can be impeached for treason, bribery, high crimes, and misdemeanors. They cannot be impeached because we don't like them. They can't be impeached because they're incompetent. They must commit some kind of crime, a misdemeanor, a felony, which would be a high crime, accepting bribes, or committing treason against your country. Otherwise, you cannot. So sometimes you'll hear someone say, we need to impeach the president. We don't like him anymore. Well, not liking a president is not an impeachable offense. They have to commit some kind of crime. What role does Congress play? Well, the House and the Senate play different roles. The House votes to impeach, which means if, let's say that I am President of the United States, and let's say that there is some evidence that maybe I have accepted a bribe. The House will investigate that, and then they will vote on articles of impeachment. And if they agree that I maybe have accepted a bribe, they can impeach me. Now, to be impeached doesn't mean I've been found guilty or kicked out of office. It means I've been officially charged with a crime. It means I've essentially been indicted or charged, but we are innocent until proven guilty, even in impeachment. It takes a majority vote to bring up impeachment charges. Now, if the House votes to impeach President Grody, then it goes to trial. Remember, to be impeached just means I've been charged with an impeachable offense. That trial is held in the Senate, according to the Constitution, and the Senate conducts the trial and serves as a jury. And it takes a 2/3 vote of the Senate, so 67 senators, to convict in an impeachment case. If they do impeach and convict, let's say, a president or a judge, the most that the Constitution allows the Senate to do is kick them out of office and prevent them from holding other political offices. Now, that doesn't mean that they couldn't be charged in criminal court. Let's say that I beat up somebody. President Grody beats up somebody in office. Okay, so I could be impeached for that and convicted for that. But I couldn't be sent to prison by that, at least not by the Senate. However, I could still be charged in criminal court for that same offense, and that's not double jeopardy because impeachment is not a criminal court system. So as far as impeachment, if somebody is impeached and convicted, they can be kicked out of office. We've had 2 presidents impeached. Andrew Johnson is one of them. He was impeached but not convicted. The second one was Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was impeached but again not convicted. And you can read about both of those on your own if you want. Here was a vote to acquit. Remember, it takes 67 to convict. And on the 2 articles of impeachment, they didn't get close to the 67 votes. As far as members of Congress, the Constitution says that a member of Congress cannot be impeached. However, the Constitution specifically states that each house gets to set the rules for the behavior and conduct of their own people, and they have the authority to punish them however they want, whatever rules they have, and you can even be expelled. But it takes a 2/3 vote to expel. So basically, the House can set up their own rules, and if you violate those rules, they can determine what your punishment will be. And the same thing goes with the Senate. But the Constitution does not allow senators or representatives to be impeached. It would be really a conflict of interest since they both play a role in impeachment. All right. That is what I wanted to cover here. Now, those are a couple pages of your notes that I didn't think we really needed to spend class time on because I didn't think there was probably a lot of questions. If you do have questions, bring them up in class and I'll try to answer anything I can, or refer to the Constitution because they will have information on all that too.